Wednesday means Wing Chun class. Last week was the first class at this new school, but it was a graduation, so this week will be the first regular class. I was pretty excited for this Wing Chun class because it was the first real class that was at the new location, which is closest to my house. The previous class had been the graduation, so it was a little weird, but this week was just a normal, regular class. We did our regular warm-ups, the set that we go through at the beginning, our form, our conditioning, and then we did some shoulder tag. If you've watched the Jkd videos, links up there and down there, you know that I love shoulder tag. We played in Jkd a lot, and I love it. So we did it in Wing Chun, but we made it sort of Wing Chun-y. In Jkd, we obviously use a sort of Jkd stance, but for Wing Chun, we were using a more Wing Chun-esque stance with the weight farther back. But other than that, it was still sort of the same, sort of try to touch the other person's shoulder, but sort of move out of the way, or use Wing Chun techniques to try to stop and touch the other person's shoulder. The goal was the same: stop their punch, touch their shoulder, but we were sort of trying to use Wing Chun moves when we did it, instead of like Jkd-esque ones. And also a Wing Chun style stance. As always, I had a blast with it, but I found that doing it sort of Wing Chun-y, that's a thing now, Wing Chun-y. I just made that up. Actually, someone else probably made it up already, but regardless, doing it a Wing Chun-y way, I felt made it a little bit harder, actually, because I feel like the Wing Chun stance is not quite as good for mobility as that Jkd stance is. The Jkd stance, I felt like it's a little easier to move around, but the Jkd stance, it's a little more rooted. You can move still, obviously, but it's not quite as easy, which means you have to focus a little more on the hand techniques, trying to block and touch the shoulder, since it's not quite as easy to just move out of the way. Positives and negatives to that, I suppose. I can't do what I usually do, which is jump around a lot, but on the other hand, I'm getting to get some practice in on those tan saos and those pak saos and stuff in a slightly more fluid environment, I guess, than a normal back and forth partner drill. From there, we went into a whole bunch of self-defenses, and I'm not gonna lie, the first bunch of them I didn't love. The first one was a double cross wrist grab, but your hands are crossed, and we were doing a motion similar to the beginning of Shonin Tao, where you bring your hands around, except instead of bringing that first hand all the way under, you just sort of kept it in front. It seemed okay. It seems to work well enough. My question was, how often are you going to get grabbed like this? One thing I've noticed in class is that we do some like wrist grab self-defenses from strange wrist grabs. Like your wrists are crossed, or the person grabbing you has crossed their wrists, or one of your wrists is grabbed low and one of your wrists is grabbed high. Now, I suppose some people do get attacked that way sometimes, but they just seem a little strange and not really like ways you're often going to get grabbed. I guess I just wonder how much time should be spent on practicing defenses that you're probably not going to see much. Most people probably aren't ever going to get in a fight anyway, so we're already practicing for things that we're probably never going to need. To then make the chance even smaller just seemed a little strange. Like, there's probably a lot of wrist grab defenses that you are more likely to encounter. I feel like I'd rather be doing those, I guess. That being said, ones like this, probably going to find ways to use in my fight videos. So while I will probably never get in a fight, and if I do, probably not need that defense, I think I'm going to find a way to use them. But if I remember correctly, we were doing it, and you sort of broke the grasp there, and then you could just sort of step and sort of push. They've lost their grip after you've spun your hands like that, so the push just sort of got them off. They were really aggressive. You could throw a punch as you did your step too. But I think that strange attack probably wouldn't be coming from a super aggressive person. Maybe just the push would be better. From there, we did overarm bear hugs. That's what we call them back home in Tang Soo Do. the attacker is behind you and they're sort of just grabbing you like this. Overarm bear hugs means your arms are down and they're over your arm, and then there's underarm where they're grabbing you under your arms. We were doing overarm bear hugs, so your arms were in. I guess they could grab you from the front too. But the attacker was behind you, grabbing you over the arms like this. The first defense we did was like the previous defense, sort of from the first part of Sioning Tao, bringing your hands in and around. If you had the space, both hands. If you didn't have the space, just one hand. That would get one or both of your hands above their arms, and then you could throw some elbows. I feel like in theory that's solid, but I found that when we were practicing in class, if the attacker was really holding on tight, it was almost impossible to get even one arm up. So I feel like it's maybe got limited use to right when they first grab you and they're not holding on super tight, because once they realize you're trying to do something, they're going to hold on really, really tight, and then you're not going to be able to get your arms up. It could be that there was some sort of technique bit we were missing, like maybe you're supposed to like push your shoulders forward first or something to create a little bit of space, and that lets you bring your arm up. But I feel like at the end of the day, it's really a strength problem. If the person attacking you is stronger than you, you're going to have a lot of trouble getting those arms up, making space. And if you're stronger than them, you'll probably be able to get it up, but then why are they attacking you with an overarm bear hug? The next one we did, the beginning was quite similar to a self-defense that I think we do in Tung Sudo back home, but with a different ending that I wasn't a huge fan of. So this one started the same way, with the attacker behind you, grabbing you over the arms. But this time what you did was you sort of dropped your weight a bit, and you stepped out and then behind them. Then, after you're sort of behind, your upper body is still in front of them, you use your hip and your knee to sort of push into their leg, and you use your shoulder to sort of push them back. So they're grabbing you, and your shoulder pushes them back as your leg takes out their knee, so they fall. And I feel like back home, you're just kind of tossing them over your shoulder. You're just kind of like throwing them and assuming that they're going to let go from the surprise of being thrown backwards. The obvious problem with doing it that way, like we do back home, is if they don't let go of you, either because you don't do it quite right or because they see it coming, and they're still holding on and they pull you down with them. That's obviously the possible problem with it that way. But the way we were doing it in Wing Chun in class is we were purposely falling down with them. So instead of throwing back and just sort of tossing them over, we were actually just falling down with them. So after we did that toss, we just sort of went down with them, and as we landed on them, we just sort of elbowed them in the solar plexus. I'm not gonna lie, it was fun to do, and I feel like it looked super cool. This is another one that I'm absolutely gonna try to work into a fight video, although it might be hard to do that falling bit, honestly. But from a self-defense perspective, I was not a big fan, because if you throw that elbow wrong, you've given them your back and they can just lock in a choke. If you do it right, you might land that elbow and it could be devastating and the fight's over. But I feel like there's not much margin for error. If you fall wrong or you miss with that elbow, you're just lying on top of them. Your back is to them. They could hit you. They could grab a choke. It just seems too risky. Maybe it would be good as an emergency version of the one we do back home. So the one we do back home is you try to just throw them. And then if they don't let go, that elbow could sort of be your emergency, like your fallback move. Where if they don't let go, you throw that elbow as you're falling. Then you messing that up and them locking in a choke is sort of a worst case scenario of a worst case scenario. Worst case scenario of the first defense is they don't let go. And then the worst case scenario of the follow-up to that is that you miss the elbow. But when you're just going down with them right away, there's only one worst case scenario now. Only one worst case scenario has to happen instead of two. Maybe it's just that I don't like being on the ground. I feel like if there's more than one person and you purposely throw yourself to the ground, and his friend can just come and stomp you or punch you while you're on the ground. And if there is no other person, you could be putting yourself into a situation where it's much harder to get away. And I just don't know how I feel about that. As I get older, I feel like a little more critical of the self-defenses that I do in class. I look at them and I wonder how useful they are. And the problem with both this one and the one we do back home in Tung Sudo, where you just throw them, is I feel like if someone is doing a bear hug, they're not just going to grab you and stand there. They're probably going to try to pick you up. Either because they're going to grab you, pick you up, and throw you, or they're trying to abduct you. And if you've been picked up, that step behind self-defense no longer works. And I personally think that getting picked up is probably what will happen. That's almost definitely what they're going to do if they do that bear hug. So it would make more sense to practice a different self-defense that you don't need to be stepping for. Like I think in Tung Soo Do we have one where you like stomp the foot and then reach down between your legs and grab their foot and then pull it up. You wouldn't be able to do that if they pick you up. This one where you step behind, you can't do it if they pick you up. So in this case, that one where you bring your arm or both arms through might actually be better. Maybe if they've picked you up, they don't have a super tight grip, and you can get one of those arms through real quick and throw some elbows to their face to get them to drop you. So maybe in a more realistic case, that one that I initially didn't like actually makes more sense than the cooler one we did a little bit later. But then again, I'm pretty terrible at Wing Chun, and I wouldn't call myself great at Tung Soo Do either, and I don't get in many fights because I'm extremely charismatic. So these are really just my opinions. The last two we did I liked quite a bit more. The first one was a defense against a straight punch followed by a hook punch. So for that straight punch, we did a pak da, so we did a pak sao to stop the punch and then punch them. And then when the hook punch came from this side, we did like a sort of high tan sao. You could punch if you wanted. And then from there, with this hand up, sort of above their body, you stepped behind them and you sort of swept as you sort of brought this hand down. So you swept and pulled this hand in. I really liked it. I thought it was super cool, but I could not get it for the life of me. I'm bad at sweeps. I mention that in pretty much every video. I just can't seem to figure out how to do them. And that was the same case here. That was the case here. I just couldn't quite get that sweep right. Hopefully, if I keep practicing, I will eventually figure the sweeps out. But for this class, couldn't quite get it. From there, we did a shoulder grab from behind defense. I'm pretty sure we'd done it in a previous class, and it started the same way. The other person is behind you. They're grabbing your shoulder. So it's this shoulder, their right arm. You sort of bring this hand up, and then you step around, and then you wrap around, and then you bring this hand up, and you sort of control it. Then, if they resist, you can take that hand that's controlling, and you can sort of grab the head and sweep. Definitely no problems with this one. Like I said before, I think it's very similar to a shoulder grab defense that we have in Tung Soo Do. If I had any problem with it at all is that a shoulder grab from behind doesn't seem like a particularly threatening attack, and you might be escalating the situation a little bit by doing that defense. You just take a couple quick steps forward and they're going to lose their grab on you. Maybe that would be a less aggressive defense, I guess. Otherwise, I didn't have any problem with it. Might try to work this one into a fight video too, honestly. So it's up, around, loop, control, attack the head if they are resisting. That being said, of course, I was not so good at that head attack. It's not a full-on sweep like the previous defense, but it's still takedowny enough that I was pretty bad at it. So hopefully see more of those sweeps in future classes so I can get more practice in.